So today here we have aluminum end panels, commonly found on the Roland Jupiter 8, Jupiter 6, Crewmar Bit 99 had them. I think the Crewmars were painted. And a common occurrence on these, they're made out of aluminum, and in time, over the years, they become scratched and covered in gook. We'll show you how to restore these to the original factory finish, the way they were originally done. We will also show you a couple of simpler ways you can restore them using common Home Depot or Lowe's products instead of the $800 professional machine. So there are a few ways these can be restored. We're going to start with this one. Just see if we can get this gook off. We're going to start with some 91% rubbing alcohol. And if that doesn't do it, we'll move to the goof off, which is really good for getting about anything off. So here we go. That's working all right. But I have my doubts that it will do much up here. So we may try the goof off and see how well it softens that up to remove it. And goof off, you gotta be careful. It doesn't hurt anything, but it likes to pour, so you have to be careful when you pour it, or it'll be everywhere. Yeah, you can see the goof off does a better job on it. The trick with the goof off is to rub it not too hard and kind of let it soak in. As it emulsifies what you're removing, it will come off easier that way than just elbow grease. So we're going to start off showing you the different methods you can do these panels with as far as rebrushing and finish them. Now you should note that these were originally brushed and then they were coated with a clear coat, I guess basically to protect them further. The quickest and simplest method is going to be when you have a fence, take yourself a board, you can make a jig, but you can take sanding sponge or a sanding block. You can just simply start doing this. This is the cheapest method, which requires a lot of time and a lot of elbow grease, because you have to get through that clear coat that was originally on these. You can use a paint stripper to remove that clear coat first, which is helpful, but either way, this is the most cost-effective way. It's also the way, if you have bumps or imperfections on this seam, you can go along the linear direction on this as well and clean that up just like new. Some people will want to put these in a vise for this operation, and you can, but if you do, you'll want to have the aluminum jaw clamps you can buy in the various stores, so that you don't clamp down into the aluminum and leave all these little marks. I prefer to do it by hand, just it gives you a little more control over it. Okay, so the second way, we're going to use the belt sander. Now you will need pallet or a fence, some kind of jig that you can bolt this down to with a fence to run your sander alongside of. So what we're going to do, we're going to use countersunk screws. You can see the head, which will fit into these holes that are countersunk below the level of the surface of the aluminum. That way when we finish this, you're not sanding the heads of the screws off, they're just there to hold your work down. And the purpose for all this is to create straight lines. If you just do it by hand, your lines are going to be wavy and all over the place. So let's bolt down our work. So now we are parallel with the fence. the brush lines, everything. So your next step is very important. That is to wear some kind of eye protection or a face shield. Face shields are good if you have them. Eye protection at minimum. So the reason there's a gap here, and you'll want this gap, is that you want to be able to get clear to the edge of your work. And your sanders usually have things sticking out the sides or whatever. So you want to have that little bit of workspace so that your sandpaper is always over that edge. Now the thing about using a belt sander, this will work, but you're dealing with a lot of surface at the same time, so they're going to want to run away from you. It takes a lot of muscle to do it this way. This grit that's on here right now is a 100 grit. Now the lower the grit number, the more pronounced your lines will be. 100 is pretty good on a belt sander for these. It pretty much matches the original finish. So without further delay, you can see how fast that works it right off of there. With a little practice and work, you can take all the imperfections out doing it this way. This is what most people don't have. This kit will run you in the neighborhood of $800 to buy, and each one of these wheels comes in a different grit, different finishes. These wheels run about $30 a piece. So like this one right here, you can see inside that this is an 80 grit, which is probably one of the more common ones used. It's the same one that's on this wheel, except this one is what we use on these panels because it's 80 grit mixed with what's essentially a Scotch-Brite pad. So it brushes and polishes it in one shot. Saves you a lot of work. Now, these have a speed control on them. Usually want it somewhere in the middle. You don't want to go too fast with these because the nature of this, but unlike the belt sander, you're only dealing with this small little space here that's contacting this at one time, and that gives you a little more control over what you're doing. So now we've got this turned around because you want the one end. The easier way to avoid curving that end when you're moving with the tool is to turn it around and just save that for your last little bit. Ready? Okay, so we've done part of this, but the machine isn't wide enough for the entire thing, so we've added an extra temporary 2x4 for a fence to space this over. So now you can see that the media will actually cover the remaining width of this. So now we can finish this part out and then continue with any small spots we need to finish. Okay, so here we have it mostly rebrushed. Now you can take your sanding sponge, or you can actually use, some people have a bench grinder and different things. You don't want to use a grinder, but you want to use a bench sander or this, because when you start on this, you always end up with a little curved edge here. And you will want to carefully clean that up, whichever method you're most comfortable with doing. So here we have a before and after, a little more. And as you can see, the one on the left with its new brushing compared to the one on the right with its original patina, and in time they smooth out. You also have more pronounced brushing when you don't have a clear coat on it. If you clear coat the new one like factory, you'll see the brushes, but you won't be able to feel them if you run your finger across it. That's a matter of preference at that point. If you do want to clear coat it, I would recommend a lacquer, because a urethane coating would be a lot tougher, but it will yellow it. It will have a yellow tinge to it as a result of the urethane content.